Welcome to the Midlife Fulfilled podcast. Are you over 40 and ready to truly thrive? Well, on this podcast, we go deep on ways to thrive across the 5 pillars of midlife: health, fitness, career, relationships, and legacy. I'm Bernie Borges, midlife advocate, life coach, and your host. Subscribe now and get ready to thrive. Megan, welcome to the Midlife Fulfilled podcast, a maximum episode.
Thank you, Bernie. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Well, I'm excited for our conversation, so let's get to it. Let me begin with a brief introduction. Megan, you have more than 20 years experience in higher education. You currently serve as the director of the Tower Fellows program, which is an Encore education initiative at the University of Texas at Austin. And in this role, you lead the strategic direction and recruitment and the programmatic elements of the program. I can't wait to hear more about that. And prior to that, you were at Southwestern University, Associate Vice President for Alumni and Parent Relations at Southwestern University. And you've held other roles in higher education. So, Megan, where I want to begin our conversation in this maximum episode is I want to hear your backstory. Tell us your backstory.
Well, happy to share. It's been an interesting journey, I would say, working in higher education for as long as I have. It's not a field when you are 8 years old that you think, oh, I want to do that when I grow up. It took me until I was about 21. But I was in high school, I was the student who was involved in everything. I was in student council. I was on the tennis team, an athletic trainer for football, class president. That was me. I was that kid. And I think that's carried over here into my 40s. You ask my parents that. But in college, I did the same. I was involved across campus in different areas. My thought back then, though, was that I was going to be a maxillofacial surgeon.
Really?
I know. So very focused. So I was a student studying the sciences and enjoyed it. But I loved college, and it took a mentor that I had in college to say to me, you know, you can do this for a job, right? And I thought for a moment, I could do this for a job, and I loved it. I worked throughout college for the university, part-time in different student employment roles, but just found a love and passion for working in education. My mom's a teacher, and so
Okay.
in the end, it didn't fall that that far from the tree.
Right.
And so it's fun to early on to compare notes while she was still teaching middle school. But I've worked across different areas, as you mentioned, of the university. I received my master's in what they call college student personnel. So it's to work in higher ed, focused in student development theory and organizations. But throughout my career, I mean, I've worked in admissions, I've worked in student life, I advised student government association, service learning trips that traveled internationally, and spent then a number of my years working in advancement and alumni and parent relations. And so
it sounds like you've had a variety of different roles in higher ed with a few different higher ed institutions. And so now you're at the University of Texas at Austin. You head up a program, which is an Encore education program, the Tower Fellows program. So my next question, Megan, is kind of a two-part question. And that is, tell us about the Tower Fellows program. What is it? But also, what is it in the context of, like, what is Encore education? Because you really can't explain the Tower Fellows program without really explaining Encore education.
Of course. So the Tower Fellows program is a program for accomplished individuals who are looking for what comes next in life. And I think a lot of us mid-age are thinking about that. And education is a catalyst for transitions. I mean, I think at any age, students are looking to education to ask that question. In this case, the Tower Fellows, it's a cohort of individuals who want to step back into the classroom. They are curious, want to learn more, to maybe take a year of reflection, and study what's of interest to them. So the program includes, well, let me say the program's customized for every person. So every person's experience is going to be a bit different, depending on what it is that they're wanting to study. But they step back in the classroom with the students that are here at UT Austin, undergraduate, graduate level classes, and that is this notion of encore education. It's coming back as midlife adults. Our participants are anywhere from age 50 to 84.
Okay.
And they are a part of the educational system here at UT. We also have our own Tower Fellows programming that takes place. We meet 2 to 3 times a week. We bring in the faculty to talk about their research, so cutting edge research that's taking place, having small group conversations and discussions about that research. We give a bit of a behind the scenes look at what is taking place at UT in regards to the museums, visiting different laboratories. We're the robotics laboratory on campus, what's happening with artificial intelligence, to going to a theater production here on campus, or literally a backstage tour even of the theater. And so it's really a vibrant environment to re-engage in the university community.
And it's on campus, right?
It's on campus. It is an immersive 2-semester experience. So individuals are either relocating here to Austin for those 9 months, or maybe some are from the area. But we actually we'll have fellows join us each semester. So what's nice about it is that there's flexibility. So someone can join us in the spring semester in 2025 and then come back for the spring semester of 2026. The 2 semesters do not have to be consecutive.
So, Megan, when I look at some of the analytics for the Midlife Fulfilled podcast, I can't help but observe that more than half of the listeners are in the U.S. You and I are Americans. We're located in the U.S. But you know what? There's a fair amount of listeners that are outside the U.S.
Yeah.
As far away for you and I, as far away as Australia and parts of Europe. So why don't you talk a little bit about Austin? For those that may not be familiar with Austin, Texas, tell us a little bit about Austin.
Well, Austin is, in the 10 seconds since you've asked that question, it's changed again. I mean, Austin it is a quickly developing and growing city. I first moved to Austin in 2005, and the skyline has changed so dramatically in the last 19 years. But Austin has everything from beautiful weather, so much to do outdoors. We have a river that goes through, Colorado River goes through downtown Austin. It's an active business sector that is here, a very engaged community. A lot of nonprofit organizations are here in town. And we're really fortunate the University of Texas at Austin. This is the main campus, largest campus within the UT system. It is here. And Austin's also the capital of the state of Texas, for those who aren't familiar. In fact, I can look out my window and see our state capitol, which is really, really kind of special.
I've actually only been to Austin once, and it was not recently. The other little plug that I'll give for Austin is that it is also the site of the annual South by Southwest conference,
Yeah.
which is an amazing conference. I watch the videos all the time. It's a combination of music and technology, and people travel to that conference from all over the world. So I don't know how Austin landed that conference, but it's that's the venue or location, and it's great. Let's get to some storytelling. I'm really interested to hear some stories of some people that have been through the Tower Fellows program, because I know that Encore education, like Tower Fellows, can be life changing. So, you have an example or two you want to share?
Sure. No, I'm happy to. There's a couple of unique stories that I'd really love to share that I think show just the range of interest that there is in people coming to the program. Because I think what's special about Encore education is that it really is helping people really find their purpose in this next stage of life and finding a different, uh, maybe new or refreshed fulfillment for themselves. And so, so we have several couples who've joined the program together,
Oh,
and,
really? Okay.
several, and it's actually really adorable because they get to be college students again. Maybe they met in college,
Right.
but most didn't, and so they have different interests, taking different classes, but you still see them with their backpacks across campus catching lunch between
Yeah.
classes or at our events. But there's a couple wanted to share that they found out about the program within their hometown here in Texas. They are from Corpus Christi, which is along the coast, and learned of someone who they knew had been in the program. Did a little research. It was something they were looking for of determining what comes next. One worked in energy, and one worked in education, and so coming from different lenses. When they arrived here in Austin, so they moved here for the year. They came in and again took classes of complete differing interests. One wanted to learn more about solar energy, and in fact found a new full-time job. So ended up working full-time as a Tower Fellow, but made that connection while they were here on campus.
Hmm.
And the other, she came to the program with a project in mind that she had 60 years of her father's photography,
Hmm.
and wanted to find in northwest Mexico. And her father had been a professional photographer. The images were in a closet in her sister's home, and she wanted to find a place really for those to be accessible to the public, and but they needed to be curate. The curation process had to take place, and where could she donate all these images? And so she spent the entire year studying archival process, curation, and she archived her own father's collection, and donated it all here to the Benson Collection for Latin American Studies here at UT. The end of her year, we had a celebration of that donation, and it was just really a beautiful culminating experience that she came in with a project in mind, and she was able to
So,
do it.
so I would imagine that you see a lot of that spectrum. And what I mean, Megan, is, one end of the spectrum might be they're coming in really not knowing anything about what they want to do next in their life. And they're just open minded, and they're just there to have the experience, and whatever unfolds for them, unfolds for them. And then the example of this woman you just told the story where she had a project in mind, So I would imagine you see that spectrum. And that's fascinating to me. I want to know, what do you see in the way of interaction, engagement, relationships between the Tower Fellows cohorts and students, undergrad and grad students as well, who are, decades and decades younger?
So no, that's a great question. So I um, it's interesting because the Tower Fellows, they are in the classroom with the traditional students that are here on campus. Their focus is on the re-experiencing college and less on the grades, because the Tower Fellows do not have to study or take tests. Study for exams, I should say. They do engage in the readings and group projects for most of the classes if that is a component. So we will have Tower Fellows who, they will be matched with a group of students to complete a project, and they'll offer a different lens to those projects because they have years of experience in the workforce or just in life and wisdom that they can add to those projects. But so we'll see in the classroom, in answering questions that faculty may pose, that they're again bringing that lens. But we'll also see one-on-one mentorship. So we have a Tower Fellow that this past semester, she's from Houston, Texas, and she would drive in on Monday and drive home on Thursday, and so be here during the week for her classes and our activities. But she really formed a mentorship connection with a student who was a first-year student in one of her classes, and they became friends. The student was also from Houston. When she needed a ride home to get home at maybe spring break or for a long weekend, our Tower Fellow gave her a ride, gave her advice on, she was looking to interview for a role and what should I wear, and really, both the student and our Tower Fellow added to one another's lives, and there's a lot of beauty in that.
Yeah. I can appreciate that. I have a mentor-mentee relationship with a gentleman who's 28 years old, so he's decades younger than me, and I enjoy mentoring him. It's a different setting, right, from your program, but nonetheless, it's one of those relationships. I enjoy mentoring him, but I also enjoy hearing from him, learning from him, gaining insights from him, because he's 28 at a different time than when I was 28, so I can appreciate that. What about during the academic year? Because you said there are 2 semesters, right? That the Tower Fellows. Okay. During the academic year, they're attending classes. Are there also other events that they can attend that are specialized, kind of
Yeah.
tied to the program?
No, there are. So we have we have our distinguished speaker series. Those are our events, and something else we call Longhorn Highlights. Those are the behind the scenes activities. But there's so many events taking place at UT Austin on a weekly basis, that when I started in this role, I realized it's hard to navigate because it's such a large landscape of what's taking place. The Lyndon B. Johnson Presidential Library here is on campus, and they'll have different speakers that are here. They'll have films that are being shown, but then we'll have at when the solar eclipse took place earlier this year, there were so many events taking place for the solar eclipse across campus. But there's different academic speakers, and a number of fun events. But some of them to know what is really meeting the audience of the Tower Fellows. So when I first started, I started pulling all of that together, and I send a weekly email to our Tower Fellows. So here are a curated list of 9 events that I think they'll be interested in. And so I've sent that since I started in this role. What's funny is that there are a lot of Austin residents now that want on my mailing list, who aren't in the Towers Fellows program, and they just want to know what's happening on campus. And so my list of recipients for our 9 events just keeps increasing. But I love it because I think that's why some people live in a college city or college town, is
Right.
to engage in those activities.
Right. Right. That's great. What about the cohort themselves? You said it's around 15 or 20 per cohort, right?
Yes.
So are you seeing those folks bond with each other, hang out together, just really building relationships, or are they kind of, doing their own thing?
No, it becomes a real network, I would say, of like-minded individuals, and not just even within our cohort. We put a concerted effort in the past cohorts still engage with the program on a regular basis. So for within each cohort, I'll see fellows who take classes together. That they both have a particular interest in, maybe it is public policy or history, or art. And so they'll take classes together. But our gatherings, when we get together, again, twice a week for the faculty lectures. I mean, those are scholarly conversations, and they are learning from one another in those environments. I love hearing from the faculty and the research they're presenting, but I may learn even more from some of the questions the fellows are asking, to dig a little deeper, and concepts that are, and topics that I've not thought about in the research that the research is being presented. But we'll see fellows who, afterwards they're getting dinner together or going to see a show here on campus that isn't even something that I've shared with them that they've heard about. We'll have events that are locally in town. There's a sculptor who was a faculty member at UT, very famous, Charles Umlauf. He has a sculpture garden that his family had left to the city. We had an event there, and a number of alumni came back because it was a private tour of Dr. Umlauf's home and his studio, which looked like he still had materials there from the 80s and 90s, and so it felt like stepping a bit back in time. So we have a number of social events. Our academic director, she would have us out to her ranch every semester, or I guess every spring, and we'd have a big outdoor dinner together. And you just really see the camaraderie for the cohort coming together. We had at our commencement ceremony for this latest cohort, we had about half of our alumni come back for that celebration.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And so you get to see that the relationships that are formed, it's meaningful.
Yeah, yeah.
And they want to get to know one another. They see the value in the network that's being that they're joining and maintaining that years after
Yeah.
their participation.
So you call it a commencement. Is this a ceremony? It's a ceremony?
It is a ceremony. I mean, so each Tower Fellow.
It's not like graduation, right? It's not that kind of
graduation.
ceremony.
They're not receiving a degree,
Right, right.
but we do give them a certificate that's framed for them to
Sure.
display in their home or their office, and each Tower Fellow who's completing their experience presents a bit on what they learned and what was it. Just capturing the essence of of the program. They'll share slides from some of their classes or projects they worked on. But it's a very heartfelt moment for all of us, and I love that we really get to see the range and array of classes that people are taking.
And in those speeches, if you will, if you call them speeches, have you heard some of the members of the cohort say, as a result of these last 2 semesters in the Tower Fellows program, I've learned this about myself, and this is what I'm going to go do in the next chapter of my life? I mean, have you heard those kind of speeches or stories?
Yes, I mean it's different. It's different for each person. I think for some, they'll reflect a bit, but in the case of if it's a couple, they'll talk about one another and the growth that they saw in their partner during the time too. Seeing someone maybe come out of their shell more or really find a new passion for a topic. We had a Tower Fellow this semester that she wanted to take a woodworking class. And during her experience, she created a porch bench, a swinging porch bench that she has a physical, a physical representation of her experience. that she's putting at her home. But that took a lot of work and dedication for her to put into it. And she said, she's like, I'm proud of myself that I was able to do that. And 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 now she has something for her always to remember, the
Yeah.
experience by. But the growth itself, I primarily even hear it from those around them and those who see their how they've
You
grown.
mean like family and loved ones?
Family, loved ones, fellow cohort members as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine, Megan, I'm speculating. I haven't been through an Encore education program. I'm speculating that if I was to go through one and I attended classes that I did not attend in my university experience 40 some odd years ago, that I'd come out of the program thinking, wow, I've taken some classes I wish I had maybe taken in my undergraduate days. So I'm going to reinvent myself and become a computer scientist or whatever, whatever that
Right.
experience is. Like, I can kind of only imagine. The, as you said, it's different for everyone, but it can be so incredibly life changing. Like, they can just learn so much. Give us, your kind of closing thoughts on this whole Encore education thing. I think it's fascinating. Just let's say someone is listening to this podcast for the first time, meaning they've never heard of Encore education before, even though I've talked about it before. It's been a while. Give us your closing thought on what should people be thinking about when they're thinking about this concept of Encore education.
Mhm. I think if someone has a curiosity for life and learning, if they are trying to figure out what comes next, what they want to do next, but need support in navigating where their contributions really can make the most impact in the world, I think it's a wonderful. There are wonderful programs, Tower Fellows. There are other programs that are much like Tower Fellows that are popping up now more so across the country. There's only a handful to start, but I think for people to find the right fit this for them. But there are people out there that can help in navigating, and being able to step into a classroom, maybe with those who are 18 to 25, instill some wisdom, learn from them. I mean, I think that's part of the beauty of intergenerational
Yeah.
programs is,
Yeah.
you know, that to me is how we will all survive in society and the world, is we take time to listen to new perspectives and learn from one another. But that takes a bit of risk and curiosity. You're putting yourself out there. So people who are eager to try something new, I highly encourage it. I mean, I know we'll share my information, but I'm happy to talk with people about that. I mean, the reason I ended up going into higher ed, as you were going back to it, asked about my backstory, is I really wanted to help people find their purpose and figure out what comes next. And my own life journey took other people mentoring me, providing me with some guidance, and I've been able to do that. When working in admissions and student life, and now here working in with Encore Education, it's just a different student, and people asking the same questions of what comes next. So I
Hmm.
think it's valuable for everyone to take time for themselves and reflect for themselves, that question.
Yeah. Great. Very well said. Thank you. And you mentioned your contact details. So why don't you share your contact information, as well as, of course, a link to the Tarot Fellows program. And of course, my listener knows that will be linked up in the show notes for the episode.
Yes, thank you. So the Tower Fellows program, our website is towerfellows.utexas.edu. If they just go to their web browser and type in Tower Fellows, I'm sure we will pop up.
Yep.
My email address is on our Tower Fellows webpage. But my LinkedIn is probably my favorite social media platform anymore. That's how Bernie and I first met,
Yep.
was through LinkedIn. But my handle on LinkedIn is just Megan Frisque, as my name's written.
Yep. Fantastic. Well, again, my listener knows that that will be linked up in the show notes for this episode. And, Megan, this is the Midlife Fulfilled podcast. So we, of course, like to talk about how people can thrive and seek and find fulfillment in their midlife seasons. And I think Encore education is certainly one of those ways. Of what you're doing at the Tower Fellows program at the University of Texas at Austin, which is an awesome location. So I just want to thank you for taking time to share your story, your backstory, and the Tower Fellows program, and just give us that insight around just the fulfillment opportunities that are available for people who explore that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Bernie, for having me. It's been a real joy, and I appreciate you, being a part of this conversation for midlife individuals.
Thank you, Megan.